Hey there, everybody. Welcome. We are in the middle of a study called A Man After God's Own Heart, the life of David in the Bible, and today is part number 31 of this series. I'm not sure exactly how far it's going to run, to be honest with you, but it doesn't matter. We're here today, and we're going to get done 2 Samuel chapter number 14. If you're able, turn your Bibles there with me, please. 2 Samuel chapter number 14. We're going to see here Joab tries to intervene. If you've not been up to speed, one of David's sons, Amnon, raped David's daughter, Tamar, Amnon's half sister, and Absalom, who is the son that will ultimately rebel against David and try to take over the kingdom, is defending Tamar, but he's on the outs with his father now. And so today we're going to see Joab try to reconcile David and Absalom. And David has the responsibility to do so. And we'll see how this all plays out. So 2 Samuel chapter 14, verse number 1. Now Joab the son of Zeruiah perceived that the king's heart was toward Absalom. So he knows that David loves Absalom. He knows that David cares for him still, and he's burdened by this strained relationship. And Joab sent to Tekoa, and fetched thence a wise woman, and said unto her, I pray thee, feign or pretend thyself to be a mourner, and put on now mourning apparel, and anoint not thyself with oil, but be as a woman that had a long time mourned for the dead. And come to the king, and speak on this manner unto him. So Joab put the words in her mouth. So Joab goes and he finds this lady from this distant city, and he says, I need a favor from you. She's a very wise lady. She's going to understand why Joab is trying to do what he's doing here. And so he enlists her help. He tells her to dress like a widow who's in mourning. And he tells her exactly what to say to David. So verse number 4, when the woman of Tekoa spake to the king, she fell on her face to the ground, and did obeisance, and said, Help, O king. And the king said unto her, What aileth thee? And she answered, I am indeed a widow woman, and mine husband is dead, which is what makes you a widow woman. And thy handmaid had 2 sons, and they two strove together in the field, and there was none to part them, but the one smote the other, and slew him. So what she's saying is, my husband is dead. I have 2 sons. My 2 sons were in the field, and they were fighting with each other. No one was around to break it up, and so one ended up killing the other. Verse 7, and behold, the whole family is risen against thine handmaid. And they said, Deliver him that smote his brother, that we may kill him for the life of his brother whom he slew. And we will destroy the heir also. And so they shall quench my coal which is left, and shall not leave to my husband neither name nor remainder upon the earth. Now, God had told man that anyone who sheds the blood of another man is to be put to death. So according to the laws of justice, this other son should die also. But this mother is making this appeal that David would pardon her living son for the murder of his brother, her second son. And she's appealing on the basis of she'll have no heir for her family. Her husband will have no one to carry on the family name, and these particular reasons. So, David, verse number 8, the king said unto the woman, Go to thine house, and I will give charge concerning thee. And the woman of Tekoa said unto the king, My lord, O king, the iniquity be on me, and on my father's house, and the king and his throne be guiltless. And the king said, Whosoever saith aught unto thee, bring him to me, and he shall not touch thee any more. Then said she, I pray thee, let the king remember the Lord thy God, that thou wouldest not suffer the revengers of blood to destroy any more, lest they destroy my son. And he said, As the Lord liveth, there shall not one hair of thy son fall to the earth. And so that's what they wanted to hear the king say, both Joab and this lady. David says, Don't worry about it. Go home. We're going to make sure you're protected and taken care of. And she said, But not just me, my son also. I want to make sure my son is taken care of. And he says, Don't worry. No one is going to touch a hair on the head of your son. So David, out of concern for this widow lady, loyalty to family, he overrides the rule of justice here for those who would have been calling for this other young man's life. And for the record, this whole thing is fictitious. It didn't really happen. Just as Nathan came and told that story about the poor little man with the pet lamb, they're doing it again with David. They set David up with these stories, and then they play into his actual life. Now, this story is different enough that it's not going to set off any alarms to him. So, verse 12, Then the woman said, Let thine handmaid, I pray thee, speak one word unto my lord the king. And he said, Say on. So the matter is done, but she has one more thing she wants to say to him. And the woman said, Wherefore then hast thou thought such a thing against the people of God? For the king doth speak this thing as one which is faulty, in that the king doth not fetch home again his banished. So what she's saying is, hey, king, in my case, you saw that it was the right thing to do to pardon my living son for killing his brother. But don't you have a son who killed his brother that's been banished away from the kingdom? Don't you think you should take care of reconciling with Absalom? That's what she's getting at. Verse 14, For we must needs die, and are as water spilt on the ground, which cannot be gathered up again. Neither doth God respect any person, yet doth he devise means that his banished be not expelled from him. Now therefore that I am come to speak of this thing unto my lord the king, it is because the people have made me afraid. And thy handmaid said, I will now speak unto the king. It may be that the king will perform the request of his handmaid. For the king will hear to deliver his handmaid out of the hand of the men that would destroy me and my son together out of the inheritance of God. Then thine handmaid said, The word of my lord the king shall now be comfortable. For as an angel of God, so is my lord the king, to discern good and bad. Therefore the Lord thy God will be with thee. And so she says, King, let me give you some advice. Just as you are going to pardon my son who killed his brother for the benefit of our family, you really need to consider pardoning Absalom for slaying his brother for the sake of your family and the greater good of the nation of Israel. We need, as a nation, to know that the king and his sons are on good relations, that they're on good terms one with the other. So let's see how David responds. Then the king answered and said unto the woman, Hide not from me, I pray thee, the thing that I shall ask thee. So he says, I'm going to ask you a question. I expect the truth. And the woman said, Let my lord the king now speak. And the king said, Is not the hand of Joab with thee in all this? And the woman answered and said, As thy soul liveth, my lord the king, none can turn to the right hand or to the left hand from aught that my lord the king hath spoken. For thy servant Joab, he bade me, and he put all these words in my mouth, in the mouth of thine handmaid. And so she gives up Joab. David, he knows Joab's involved here. And notice how she flatters before. You're too smart for us, king. You're very, very wise. Nothing can be hid from you, king. To fetch about this form of speech hath thy servant Joab done this thing. And my Lord is wise according to the wisdom of an angel of God to know all things that are in the earth. Boy, this lady knows how to talk to David, doesn't she? I mean, think about this here. This is absolutely incredible, the way that she's working him, if you will. Notice she's a wise lady. And I'll tell you, it's not wrong to treat people with kindness and respect in order to help them understand what it is they need to understand. We sometimes think a good punch in the nose might get their attention, but more often than not, respecting them and kindness is what's going to get us where we want to be with them. Verse 21, the king said unto Joab, Behold, now I have done this thing. Go therefore, bring the young man Absalom again. So David tells Joab, Go fetch Absalom and bring him home. And Joab fell to the ground on his face and bowed himself and thanked the king. And Joab said, Today thy servant knoweth that I have found grace in thy sight, my lord, O king, and that the king hath fulfilled the request of his servant. So Joab arose and went to Geshur and brought Absalom to Jerusalem. And so Joab's plan works. Joab doesn't get in trouble. David could have really, I don't know if he could have killed him or not, but he could have punished him greatly for doing all of this. But David's a humble man, and he's a wise man. He's a man after God's own heart, theme of our subject here. And he does right by Joab, and he tells Joab, Go get Absalom, bring him back to Jerusalem. So he does. Verse 24, And the king said, Let him turn to his own house, and let him not see my face. So Absalom returned to his own house and saw not the king's face. So even though he's back in Jerusalem, David is not making the effort to get Joab back on good terms with him. Now, the rest of the chapter is a little bit of a different direction, and it's a bit funny. But in all Israel, there was none to be so much praised as Absalom for his beauty. Oh, Absalom, what a gorgeous man he was. From the sole of his foot even to the crown of his head, there was no blemish in him. And when he pulled his head, for it was at every year's end that he pulled it, because the hair was heavy on him, therefore he pulled it, he weighed the hair of his head at 200 shekels after the king's weight. And unto Absalom there were born 3 sons and 1 daughter, whose name was Tamar. She was a woman of a fair countenance. Notice that Absalom names his daughter after his sister who was defiled. That shows his heart for her there. And it talks about Absalom's beauty and his long flowing hair that he pulls. I think that means to pull it back and bind it with some sort of sticks or something like that. Then verse 28. This is funny. So Absalom dwelt 2 full years in Jerusalem and saw not the king's face. So since Joab brought him back, 2 years have passed, nothing happens. So we're at 7 years now in this whole saga. From the time that Amnon raped Tamar, then 2 years later, Absalom kills Amnon. Then Absalom is gone for 3 years. Now he's been back for 2. Total of 7 years since the incident here. Therefore, Absalom sent for Joab to have sent him to the king, but he would not come to him, meaning Joab wouldn't come to Absalom. And when he sent the second time, he would not come. Therefore he said unto his servants, See, Joab's field is near mine, and he hath barley there. Go and set it on fire. And Absalom's servants set the field on fire. He's a maniac. Joab won't respond to his request to come see him. So after asking twice, he says, Okay, I'll just set your field on fire, and we'll see if that doesn't get your attention. Then Joab arose and came to Absalom unto his house, and said unto him, Wherefore have thy servants set my field on fire? So it worked, didn't it? Joab shows up, and Absalom answered Joab, Behold, I sent unto thee, saying, Come hither, that I may send thee to the king, to say, Wherefore am I come from Geshur? It had been good for me to have been there still. Now therefore let me see the king's face, and if there be any iniquity in me, let him kill me. So Absalom says to Joab, I want to see my dad. He isn't going to listen to me. He might listen to you. And I just want to be brought before him to say, what are you going to do? If you want to kill me, kill me. But I'd rather be back in Geshur than doing, nothing here in Jerusalem. So Joab came to the king and told him. And when he had called for Absalom, he came to the king and bowed himself on his face to the ground before the king, and the king kissed Absalom. And so Joab's plan works, doesn't it? Joab's plan gets Absalom back to Jerusalem, and then it gets Absalom in front of the king. It has been 5 years since David and Absalom have seen one another, and now they're back together again. What's going to happen now? I guess you'll have to tune in tomorrow, right? What do they say? Same bat time, same bat channel. Thanks so much for watching today. God bless you. Have a wonderful day.